Okay, I'm sorry, I'm a little late. I had trouble signing on for some reason. Are we ready to start? We have a quorum? Okay, good evening. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Trinidad Planning Commission for Wednesday, February 16th, 2022. I would remind everyone that public comment may be submitted via email in advance of the meeting or in an orderly process during the conference orally or via email or Zoom chat. Your comments will be included in the public record for the meeting and will be accepted at any time during the meeting. First item on the agenda for this evening is roll call. Staff?
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Stockness,
Present.
Commissioner Hopkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Heikkinen.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes to review for January 19th, 2022. Any commissioners have any questions, comments, clarifications on the minutes?
Just one I noticed on page 5, the top line there, looks like there's a word missing between school and an operational plan. City Planner Parker suggested the school and operational plan. I think we're missing an action word there. I don't know, developer or something along those lines.
Yeah, develop should work, I think.
Any other comments, clarifications? Commissioner Stockness. You're on mute, Diane.
Okay, page 5 of 7, I just want to clarify. This is about, it's your paragraph, Commissioner Johnson. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyway, it says she informed him this proposal grew from the board's annual meeting to discuss building maintenance. And she added money allocated for the sign is from the facilities fund and can only be used for the facility. So I think it means the school facility. Is that right, Trevor? Because today she wrote, or, in her note that she sent to us, we could do something else as long as it's for the facility.
Yeah, so I think it's, structural kinds of improvements, physical improvements for the school.
Okay. I think I'll bring up the other things that were in the minutes during the discussion, because I underlined some things other people said at the last meeting. Okay, I'm done.
Anyone else?
I see my name spelled wrong on the third paragraph on page 5. And other than that, no.
Okay. Sorry about that.
It happens.
Any other comments, clarifications? All right, hearing none, do I hear a motion to approve as amended?
Motion.
A motion, do I hear a second? I see a second from Commissioner Stockness. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda are items from the floor. This is an opportunity for anyone in the public who would like to make comments on any issue other than items which we will be discussing tonight as part of our agenda. And I would remind you that we would like to limit public comments to 3 minutes per person. Do I see or hear of any public comments? I'm not seeing any. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on then to the next agenda item, which is our agenda item. First item on our agenda for public hearing, discussion, decision, and action is selection of an interim alternate vice chair. Trevor, I'll turn this over to you.
Sure, yeah. So this is just a fallback in case Richard can't make it to the next meeting or two until a new chair and vice chair are officially elected. So the council did approve the first reading of the amendment of the ordinance, changing how the chair is elected so that it's not just limited to someone who hasn't served before. But that won't go into effect until 30 days after the second reading at the March meeting. So we have at least one more meeting. And so it's just a fallback until we have that ordinance in place.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments or volunteers from the commissioners? This was just my thought of, just in case I can't be here, we just need to have somebody that we can go to or look to be the kind of chair of the meeting temporarily.
I'm happy to volunteer if nobody else has interest.
And I will nominate Aaron to do the vice chair.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, I'm not sure it takes a vote, but thank you very much. But since we do have a motion on the floor and it's been seconded, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you, Aaron, for stepping up. I appreciate that. I'll try not to be absent too much. Okay.
My work schedule will be amusing if I'm absent too.
Fair enough.
Well, then it'll have to be Tom. All right.
And
Then we won't have a quorum. So.
Oh, okay.
But I'm unclear a little bit on that in regards to, because since I'm out of the town, technically, I mean, like by 50 feet, I don't know if I am eligible, to be honest. And so I just throwing that out.
You would be eligible. That's not a requirement. You are a full planning commissioner with all the rights and privileges that go with that. Richard lives out of town as well. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'm a lot further than you, Tom. Okay, moving on to our next agenda item, excuse me. Design review and coastal development permit to replace the existing school marquee sign with a new 30-foot, 32 square foot programmable digital sign north of the existing sign, but still mounted on the same building wall. The sign can and will be programmed to control brightness and will generally be off at night. This was a continuation from our last month's meeting of January 19th, and I'll turn it over to staff for a staff report.
Thank you. So no, there's been no changes proposed to the project. The school did submit a little bit of additional information showing more visual background from another school, some photos, and a little bit more detail on how they plan to operate the sign. So that's helpful. My staff report didn't change a whole lot. I did add a little bit of information on page 3 regarding some of the issues that came up at the last meeting, including precedents and alternatives that were discussed at the last meeting. And I did speak with the city attorney a little bit about this issue. And it does seem that the regulations for the PD zone are different from the commercial zones. It is a different use. It's a public use. So I think that the Planning Commission can fall back on that in terms of it's not setting precedent for a commercial use necessarily. And I did add some language to the findings for example, let's see. So design review finding E, for example. Let's see. So its use. So the last sentence on design review finding E, its use will be limited in such a way, including hours of operation and signed copy, is to be compatible with the school and its appearance. So that language shows up in a couple of findings where appropriate. And I also added that into the motion as well, so that it's very clear that this sign is different from a potential commercial sign that could be proposed in the future. I did also alter the conditions of approval a little bit based on some of the things I saw in the Eureka new code. I still have the operation between sunrise and sunset. The school is proposing 8 to 6, which you can consider that as well. I also left a provision that in case of emergencies or temporary events, the sign can be operated while those are going on, but lighting shall not produce glare that creates a public nuisance or hazard for motorists or pedestrians. And then also condition 4, the use of the sign to display goods and services is not allowed. So basically commercial advertising is not allowed. And that the display shall contain static messages only that don't scroll or move or flash across the screen, and that the copy can't change more than once per hour. The school is proposing they wouldn't change it more than once per day. So those are really the only changes to my staff report from the last meeting. The project is still the same, and staff is still recommending approval of the project. And there were you guys got some letters and a petition from the students, and then there was another letter from Paula as well. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but it's up on the website.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. Comments, questions, clarifications from commissioners for staff? Diane?
Trevor, I didn't see the letter from Paula. So what was that about?
I can read it to you. It looks like she's also on the call, so she can speak, but it said, word the approval of modernizing the school sign that will not set a precedent for approving a commercially motivated sign. The current ordinance is permissive, not opposed to indirectly lit signs. I recommend that the PC accept the proposal for the updated school sign for the following reasons. It's a modest, modern improvement facilitating school communication with the community. It will provide a public service, publicizing local events as well as school events. It will emit less light than the current floodlight allowed at the school. It is supported by the school board, parents, and children. The character of the town will have very minimal impact. It is programmable and will not use scrolling messages and will not be on at night. In addition, it is energy saving compared to manually changing the sign, which happens at irregular times. Push button adjustments are much more convenient, especially if schedules change suddenly or emergency notifications are necessary. Creating a paid position to manually change the sign is not practical, and a monument sign is not practical.
Okay, thank you. I have another comment. I had a conversation with Ms. Nichols on Monday for about probably 10 minutes. We were across the street from the school and looking at the green outline and talking about the traffic, about the crosswalk with just the button, you know, for the flashing light. And then I was talking to her about the tree because I want the tree pruned. And we've talked about that in and out of different administrators for over 5 years. And Kyle, the maintenance man in Trinidad, suggested, he wasn't at the meeting between Miss Nichols and I, but he had suggested about 5 feet of the tree to be pruned so it doesn't leaf out into, where the new sign would be and where it says Trinidad Elementary School. So I suggested prune or cut it down, get a small bush, put another bench out there because it's a real busy place at lunchtime. And, when they have 3 different dismissals at school. So kids and parents and cars are going in and out a lot. But I did appreciate her big letter, and the pictures because I was curious about the lighting and if it was going to be colored and if it was going to be moving or changing during the day, like Cherry Heights. It's got several colors and it's too distracting, where it is. I think that's all right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners?
I just wanted to disclose that I too had a conversation shortly after the last planning commission meeting with Elise and with Desiree, just kind of about the sign to get some more questions answered. So I just wanted to disclose that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, I have just a few here. First of all, I want to thank the school and staff of the school for setting up the mock-up. That makes a big difference, helps visualize what's going on much better. And certainly want to thank the students for all their comments and their petition. I just hope that they grow up to be Trinidad Planning Commissioners in the future. So thank you very much for all those comments. Appreciate it. Trevor, I just wanted to clarify one thing with you. In your staff report, you said that you were still waiting for possibly some additional comments from the city attorney. Are we expecting more comments or did you hear from him?
I did. We went back and forth a little bit. He never really, he was focusing on the regulations and the ability to approve the sign under the existing regulations. So not so much the present issue. Basically, his final advice was that we should amend the sign regulations, which we know we would like to do, and we will be working on as part of our design amendment.
Yeah, I didn't want that to fall through the crack. So we want to make sure that that somehow gets documented and make sure that we're able to follow up on that. I had perhaps a question, and I don't see the gentleman that was on last time, who is the sign builder, but I was just a little concerned. And I'm not sure if I'm using the right term, but I know that with some displays, there is an issue with what they call image burn-in. And the concern would be if we agree to this, that if the image on the sign only changes periodically, whether that's once per hour or once per day, is there a problem with image burn-in? And I just don't want to get further into this and find out that we may need to refresh the image more than what we anticipated. So I don't see that, gentleman. Maybe Elise, Ms. Nichols, if you have any idea on that.
I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. It's Jeff Willis, who's from All Point Signs, and he didn't mention anything when I said that I would leave the image on all day. He said that would be fine. Even if it was something as simple as time and temperature, he said that would be a fine thing to do. So he didn't mention any of that in our conversations.
Yeah, I think I just want to make sure that we're covering all the bases. So that
I appreciate that. Thank you.
At least useful to make sure that that's not an issue for you. I had two other questions, I guess. The first question is, I recognize that the sign is totally programmable, and that makes a lot of sense. First of all, who's going to be responsible for the programming?
So it would be Kat, our technology coordinator, and I would be responsible for it.
Okay. I really appreciate you gave us a list of all of the activities that would be displayed on the sign at one time or another during the year. And I'm just curious, when I look through that list, and I don't know that we necessarily want to take time right now, but some of them obviously look like they are activities that occur at night. Basketball games, board meetings, etc. About how many of those meetings do you think would be at night? I guess is the first part of the question. The second part of the question is it really necessary to have the sign lit for those activities if they are ongoing that night?
No, we would definitely not have, I mean, our board meetings are very exciting, but we would definitely not need to have it on for board meetings. If we were having a basketball tournament, we might say, welcome and whatever teams are coming, just to make it inviting and a community piece. But yeah, we wouldn't need it on past 6 o'clock for a regular basketball game or a board meeting. It would just be for a special event like welcome to the Fall Carnival, welcome to a Mare event, welcome to Ocean Night. So we wouldn't need it on for those routine events.
Okay, so just to clarify in my mind, because in my mind this is very important, what you're saying is that even if there is an evening activity, the sign will still go off at 6 p.m.
Correct, unless it's a very special event, which there are not that many. But yeah, regular basketball games, 6 o'clock, it would be off.
Thank you. Just one last comment. One of the things that we talked about at the last meeting was some sort of display and usage guidelines or operations plan, whatever we wanted to call it. And I still think that would be a very useful thing to have. If nothing else, then that can be part of the public record, and so the public can see exactly what policies are being used to use the sign. For example, just public use, no advertising, etc. Times of use, those kinds of things. I think that document would be very useful and helpful for people who aren't maybe on board with the whole idea of a sign. So I don't think that's anything that I necessarily feel we need to hold up on, but I do believe that I would like to make that personally, I would like to make that one of the conditions of approval, that we have that document done.
And if it does pass, would you give me a very specific list of what you'd like to see in that, please? And then I can address each concern exactly as you need it.
Yeah, in fact, I might even suggest, not that I want to put any more work on staff, but we can certainly give you a list. I can give you my list and others can. And then maybe we can coordinate with staff and just make sure that the public is aware of exactly what's going on. Any other comments? Those are my comments for right now. Other comments? Diane.
So this is for Ms. Nichols. Is the sign going to be a black background or a dark background and then yellow or white words, or how is that going to be? How are the events and the activities and the dates going to be illuminated?
Sure. So when I went down to Fortuna and I spent some time just looking at their sign. Theirs flashed, and I do agree, it does not look good. I preferred when I could get one static image and read it. The best thing that I saw through their flashing images was a black background with the one color text. There may have been a different color text, like for just a quick emphasis, but it was primarily a black background, and that was the darkest. In the pictures I shared with you in the packet, there was a picture, I believe it was a Valentine's Day advertisement. That was a white background. So that would have been like a special event. And then there was also a no school for President's Week, and that had a flag on the background. But both of those, that would be just a special event one day, but primarily it would just be that black background with text.
And then no movement.
No movement
of
yeah.
objects or
yeah,
words.
Everything would be static. I don't know, John, did you want to?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, so it would be no movement, static text. If there was an image, it would be a static image.
Okay. And then, of course, my other one about pruning the tree. Is that going to happen?
I will, yeah, I'm going to talk to an arborist and we'll get it pruned, because it needs to be pruned.
Well, I think it'll cover up the sign. And, I wanted to, and I'm going to tell everybody right up front, I want to put that as a condition in the, if we go, through all the approval, the motion and the approval with, doing some serious pruning, because I know the letters talked about how much they love the tree and all that, but I've watched it over years, and I think the whole thing just coming up Trinidad School, the sign, and then the tree being very low, it would make it easier to see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Tom.
So I wanted to thank you for putting in that more information also. And I was going to see if maybe the display and usage guidelines that you suggested could actually be part of it. But that's what Richard was talking about. I like to see that there's an attractive wooden frame going to be happening, and that the students are going to be involved. That could be fun. And let's see. I think that's it. Oh, I know. Would you be open to, or could there be a possibility of, say, coming back and seeing how it's working after 6 months or 3 months or something like that, to see if just to see how the public's feeling about it and get some feedback or something?
Yeah, definitely. And I know I talked to the principal at Ambrosini. She said that I learned a lot actually in my conversation with her. She said that the first night she had it up, she was, she just kind of went on the usage guidelines, and she said, because it's in a residential area, kind of like ours, and she learned a lot about when it should be turned off. She said the first night it was on, her inbox was flooded with emails. So I kind of took our usage guidelines from her as well.
Great.
And so she said she's worked to come up with something that works for her community. So I felt like that was a good indication that we could do the same.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions from the commissioners? Diane.
So I underlined the part that Trevor wrote about the attorney, the city attorney. So I just wanted to read that. Okay, I think it was on page 3. His opinion was that the sign should not be approved, but that the Trinidad Union School District can exempt itself from the local regulations and then install the sign. And then it went on, while that would normally be the case as described above, it is likely not the case with a certified LCP. So what does that mean, Trevor? Certified LCP?
So that means, so that's the Coastal Act issue. So in most places, schools can exempt themselves from local rules and regulations. For example, building permits don't go through, even in Trinidad, they don't go through the city, they go through the state. So that's normally the case, but because Trinidad's in the coastal zone and the zoning ordinance has been certified by the Coastal Commission as part of the LCP, which is intended to carry out the state Coastal Act, it's basically carrying out a state law. And so the school is subject to the Coastal Act. So that's why the school is subject to the city's zoning code and can't exempt itself.
All right. If there are no other commissioner comments or questions, I'll open it up for public comment. Once again, I'll remind everyone that this is an opportunity in this case to comment specifically on this agenda item. And I request that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do I have any public comments? Okay, I think I saw Jan first and then John. So Jan?
Yeah. Well, you heard my comments last time. I'm just here to reiterate that I think the digital sign will add to the ability of the school to communicate with a larger community and with its students, parents, and staff. I think it will also be a very useful tool in case of safety issues that need to be broadcast on it. And if it does have a clock on it, I think that would be a useful tool. So I urge you to support the sign. I know change is difficult, but I think this really, in the overall picture of things, is a minor change that will improve the looks of the school while there and be much more functional for the school in terms of communication. Thank you for all your work on this, you guys.
Thank you. Mr. Adams.
Yeah, so I just like to kind of represent the students' voice. I conducted a little survey of the middle school population, and I was asked some questions, and, but overall there was support for the sign, and the idea of creating a frame was appreciated, and I think that would be a great contribution from the students. Yeah, and so there's a lot of support, and the students, some of them voiced the same concerns about about the distracting drivers and the need for replacement. And I met their questions, and I think everybody got an answer. So yeah, the students, I could say, support the sign, and yeah.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I don't see any. Oh, yes, okay. Ms. Probal.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, Diane and Trevor, the recommendation by the attorney. If you could just, we can go over that again. I think that that's really important in the decision that the commissioners make tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a clear opinion. It was kind of a back and forth conversation. His initial take, which was what was in my staff report, was that the provision about which may be indirectly lighted, provision for signs for public uses in all zones would preclude a an internally lit sign. And so we had a conversation about that, and he agreed that the ordinance isn't, it's not totally clear because of its language, because it says it may be indirectly lit, but doesn't prohibit other types of lighting. He agreed with that. And basically his final conclusion was that the sign regulation should be updated.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Ms. Nichols.
John and I made a little presentation that kind of reviews what we put in our report to you. Do you want us to go over that, or do you have any further questions about what was in there? I don't want to take up too much time saying repeated information.
Well, no, I personally, I think that would be very useful, if nothing else, just as a final review and to collect all of our thoughts in one place. So yes, please.
Okay. May I share my screen, please? Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, let's make sure we have the correct. Okay, this is screen one. Okay, there we go. All right, are you guys able to see that?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so thank you again for your time. We really do appreciate all the thought that you're putting into our digital marquee. So we did do a little bit of thinking about the operation guidelines in light of what the Planning Commission had asked. And so we're thinking, 1 image per day, static characters, no moving, no scrolling, just, here's the information to make it very clear. So like we said, the special events displays may take up the screen and might have like a picture or some sort of drawing on it, but the drawing itself would not be animated. It would just be some sort of icon. The sign would be on from 8 to 6, and this is the hours that families are on campus. It would be off during vacations in summertime. We might have it on, the last day of school. It would say, have a lovely winter vacation. We will see you on January 3rd. And then maybe December 31st, we would have it on for the short amount of time and say, just to say, remember, school will resume on January 3rd. And then it would go off. And then the next day it would say school resume on January 3rd, just to kind of let families know, oh yeah, school's going to come back. And then in the summer, again, we would have about a week before school started, we'd start turning it on so that it would say, welcome back to school. The first day is blah, blah, blah. 8th grade students had a great idea about having the sign on during the weekends. John, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so there was an interest expressed. A lot of students said that their parents don't, and just community members in general might pay more attention to the sign on the weekend rather than at the pickup or the drop off, and they don't really pass through town as much on the weekdays as the weekend. I think it's a great idea. It could be such the same hours. It could have different hours, but again, that would be up to school. Yeah.
So the students were saying that a lot of their parents don't come to drop them off. The kids walk home, but some of them come into town for brunch from 10 to 3. So that might be something we could think about. And they also thought, there's a lot of community members who might want to know and who weren't there. So that was something that they thought about. And we can talk with the Planning Commission about weekend operations, but that is something that the students thought for their families would be an effective way of communicating. And I know we had talked a little bit at the last meeting about moving the sign to that bend in the road. That would require a whole new footing. It would almost pose more of a danger to traffic as people are rounding that corner. This sign is not meant as much for people in their cars. It's more for people who are standing on the school. And so the wall sign is also a lot less obtrusive. The light pollution, I know that was a huge concern. And so I did some research about sunrise, sunset throughout the year. The sign, it turns out, will rarely be on when it's completely dark outside. Even if we go the 8 to 6, Civil twilight ended at about 5:20 p.m. on the shortest days of the year, which was December 3rd through 12th this year. And if the sign is turned off no later than 6 p.m., it'll be on for a maximum of 40 minutes after dusk. So, we're not looking at that long of a dark time. So this is Ambrosini's. Their sign is 9 by 5. Ours would be, 5 by 9. Ours would be 4 by 8. So it's, that many, it's short, it's a smaller sign. So I just went and I kind of took pictures of it as the sun set. So it's 5:39. And I wanted to give you a picture of how much light it was emitting. So I stood in different places as I took the pictures. 5:42, and sunset was that night at, sunset was at 5:43. And the last light was at 6:13. So there it is at 5:56. It's getting a little brighter, but you can see it's not emitting a lot of light. This next one was at 5:58, which was 2 minutes after the sign was before the sign was scheduled to go off. The floodlight to the left has already come on, and you can see that it's emitting a lot more light right there. 6 o'clock, the sign was off, so I wasn't able to get any more sign pictures because it was off. So this is what it would look like when it was displaying the full, a full picture. And again, it's just a static image. It's nothing moving. The flag's not waving, the heart's not beating. It would just be that. I stayed at Trinidad, got some pictures of what the streetlights were looking like in town. So this is across from the school at 6:45. So our sign would already be off. The streetlights are casting light. There's Christmas lights still on. The signs that are lit are going across the road, and the gas station lights are pretty bright. So I just was kind of trying to contrast the amount of light that we would see in town from our sign versus from some of the light that's already there. And so again, just some ideas of things that could be displayed on our sign. We've got, in a normal season, we usually have 2 volleyball games a week. It would be great to be able to remind people like, hey, volleyball game tonight, don't forget, and then turn it back on to family literacy night and family maker night and picture day information the next day. So just the ease of transitioning between sign information would really, really be great. And it would, the information would be a lot more current. And I think the community would know a little bit more about what's happening. So we thank you very much for your time. I know, John, do you want to add anything that we missed in our discussion with class?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we covered it all.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, if there is no other public comment, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any further discussion? Okay. I'll just make one comment. I'm inclined to approve this application, but I want to make sure that it's very, very clear what our conditions of approval are. So what I have, in addition to the 4 current conditions of approval, are the following: that the school work with city staff and planning commission to develop a display management plan, that the sign application be reviewed after 6 months to provide and gather input from the public on the use of the sign. And also a final one that I have is a condition of approval to prune the tree in the in front of the sign. Are there any other conditions of approval that we might want to consider? Diane.
So I also wanted to put prune the cherry tree before installing the new sign. And then I think we should add, amend and update sign regulations and ordinances, and have the planning commission and the city attorney look at those within a
you. Yeah,
year. I don't know if we can say within a year, because I think 6 months is too short, but within a year, amend and update sign regulations, comma, ordinances or sign ordinances, and have the city attorney look at these also. Okay, that's it.
Just a comment. The only concern I have is ordinances will not be updated probably within a year. So unless Trevor, you can clarify that. But
Yeah, and I think
I appreciate that. Yeah, go ahead.
it's not something that the school can comply with. That's a city responsibility. So I don't think we should limit their approval to that, but certainly, that can be direction from the planning commission to staff. And we can put that as a future agenda item. One other condition I do want to bring up. So currently I have condition 3 written as operation will be limited between sunrise and sunset. And so I want to see if you want to change it to what the school has proposed from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
I believe so, yes. I think everyone concurs on that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I've missed that.
On that same point, Trevor, at the last sentence, it should be motorists or pedestrians of condition number 3. And I think I saw Tom's hand up, and I have a condition too that I thought would be a good idea.
Tom?
I just, after this talk, we're going to go to the community design element of how the city is how it looks overall, right? And this is what we do on the planning commission. And one of the things that's on it, it says visually compatible with character of surrounding environment. I mean, that would fit in and make this thing work well with the town. And just because it can do all the stuff that it can do doesn't, try to make it good if possible. And I think you're going to have less problems in 6 months.
Okay, thank you. Was there a additional condition of approval there, or what? You were breaking up a little bit. I didn't quite hear you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think she gets the gist, just,
No.
Yeah. I was like, just, you don't use mute colors, or just make it good.
Well, and we want it to look good because it reflects on our school and our town.
I think I'm getting that feeling also. I was worried about the kids crossing on the crosswalk before, and I'm still a little bit, but maybe putting a sign down even more. I don't know. But I am concerned with that. But you guys are the school board. You know about stuff, and you don't want anything to be unsafe either. So any way we could do it to make it better, make it good for you and the town. That's all I ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other, I'm sorry, Aaron.
Yeah, I just had a couple, similar vein to what you had mentioned, Richard, for conditions. Just that kind of combining yours about the guidelines. I said, youth messaging content displayed on the sign will respect and follow the intent and spirit of guidelines outlined in sections 1 and 3 of the February 10th letter to the Planning Commission from Elise Nichols, and PowerPoint presented and agree to develop a formal guide for operational. I also had as a separate condition, the TOSD agrees to actively respond to concerns of the community as they relate to the usage of the sign. And then this last one I felt was important. Just to, it's not really a condition, it's more a comment that I think I would be comfortable capturing in here, and that the Planning Commission recognizes and respects the unique overlap in regulations between state-owned property located within our LCP area, and as such view this project approval as an exception and shall not be used to justify or encourage similar signage within the city limits.
Thank you. Good ads. Very good. Trevor, did you capture all of these?
And I can email that, my verbiage, to whoever
I
needs.
was just going to ask you to email those to me, please.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if your second condition could be sort of combined with that 6-month check-in condition, so that it's your condition, and then in 6 months they'll check back in with the Planning Commission.
Yeah, just add somebody to the effect of no longer than 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, just to be safe, Trevor, could you repeat back what, you don't have to do the whole, all of them, but just summarize what we have for conditions of approval?
Yeah, so number 5 is with Aaron's wording, we'll work with the community and staff to develop a management plan, and operations will be consistent with the guidelines provided, submitted by the school and made in their presentations. That I'm sorry. Can you do those again, Aaron, please?
Yeah. Do you want me to just take a stab at making a motion, Richard?
Combine two.
If you would like to make a motion, certainly. I just was trying to clarify the conditions of approval before we had the motion, but if you want to put them into the motion, that would be acceptable as well, I'm sure.
Okay, I'll give that a shot and see if that works. So based on application materials and information included in the staff report, based on public testimony, and due to the fact that the sign serves a public use on public property with limited hours, brightness, and copy, I find that the project is consistent with Trinidad's LCP and other applicable regulations, and I move to adopt the information and required design review, view protection, and other findings in this staff report, and approve the project as submitted in the application and described in the staff report and as conditioned therein, keeping 1 through 4 as existing with the changes to number 3 of 8 to 6 and the changing of the word to or. And then additional conditions, obstructing trees will be maintained and pruned. Use, messaging, content displayed on the sign will respect and follow the intent and spirit of guidelines outlined in sections 1 and 3 of the February 10th letter to the Planning Commission from Elise Nichols and the PowerPoint presented. And they agree to work with the city to develop formal guidelines for management and usage of the sign. Number 7, TUSD agrees to actively address and respond to concerns of the community as they relate to the usage of the sign no later than 6 months as the first check-in point. And then lastly, the Planning Commission recognizes and respects the unique overlap and regulation of state-owned property located within our LCP area, and as such, view this project's approval as an exception and shall not be used to justify or encourage similar signage within city limits.
Great. Thank you. Diane. Okay, you're on mute, Diane, and we have a motion. So do I hear a second?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Is this where I can talk?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So in the motion, are we covered when it says, I find that the project is consistent with Trinidad's local coastal program and other applicable regulations? So do we want to keep applicable regulations, Trevor?
Yes. So,
Okay.
and that's, I think the staff report provides that background and justification.
Okay, and then what about consistent with the LCP program? Is that going to be okay?
Yeah, that's the same. That would be part of the applicable regulations, yeah.
Okay, and then we don't want to say anything about the attorney or the sign regulations, just make a plan that we check in with them and, because Richard said we're not going to get it done in a year.
Well, so the school will work on their, management operations plan. They're responsible for that. But in terms of the city's regulations, that's the planning commission staff's responsibility and not the school. So we don't want to put any limitations on the school for that.
Okay.
And yes, I would imagine that new sign regulations are going to take at least a year, if not more. And, we have to fit that into our other priorities as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I believe it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Nichols, and your staff and your students.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your time. I really do appreciate this.
Well, we're not done yet, but we'll get there.
I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on our agenda is item 4, general plan update, the community design element, discussion of the draft community design element of the Trinidad general plan. Again, this is a continuation from the January 19th, 2022 meeting. Trevor, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So I have updated and revised the community design element based on our discussions at the last meeting. You have a track changes version of the document so you can see the changes that have been made. The last couple meetings, the changes have been pretty minor, and I think we're starting to, especially when we're talking about a real project like the school sign, we're starting to get bogged down a little bit in the details of the design review guidelines. And so my suggestion, again, this community design element is intended to be a part of the general plan. So it's general guidance. And I would suggest, at least for now, it's probably good enough. And I think that we would make better use of our time by moving on to the actual design guidelines and updating those from the zoning ordinance. So that's sort of my suggestion at this point. Maybe you don't want to finalize the community design element. Maybe you want to revisit it again after we work on the design guidelines. But that would be my suggestion at this point, is to sort of set this aside as good, maybe not perfect, but good for now. And I have actually started to pull out the existing design findings and standards that we have, and then look at some other examples so that I have something to give you at the next meeting. I didn't have time to get that all put together for this meeting, but that is something that I am working on, and it's something that is part of our SB2 tasks to sort of help make the standards more objective, so that the design review process is a little bit easier, especially for residential projects. So that would be my recommendation at this point.
Okay, thank you. Just for clarification, you're not asking for a motion or anything tonight, just a suggested action. Is that correct?
I mean, if you want to recommend approval of the current version of the community design element to the city council tonight, that's one possibility. But if you're not comfortable with that quite yet, another option would be to sort of table this for now until you look at the more specific design guidelines and maybe revisit this once you get through those to make sure that they're consistent.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, that's great. Comments, questions for staff from commissioners?
I just say, I like the idea of, I agree, this is, I think, good enough for now. I like the idea of tabling it, getting into the weeds, and then coming back to this and just kind of making sure this isn't too specific once we've kind of nailed the details down. So I kind of like that direction, just to table it and move on.
Any other comments? Diane?
So Trevor, you don't want any comments on this then? that
No, if you have comments at this point, that's fine. And so maybe.
Okay, so I just have one. On page 4, CD 2.5.1, you know me, I am adamant about the vegetation management plans. And I know you talked about it here and then a little bit further on. So in this program, planner program for bluff side vegetation, maintenance consistent with protections for slope stability, issues and cultural resources. And that's under scenic views for the coast, and we don't add neighborhoods there after cultural resources because it's just public views or a public vegetation management plan for, I don't know, city staff or.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. It would be publicly owned vegetation. The city's not going to do a management plan for private landscaping. And it seems like the bluff vegetation, whether it's mowing and trimming along trails or, trimming trees for views, it can run that whole gamut. So that I believe is the idea behind that program.
Okay, so they don't clean the neighborhood streets after storms or tree limbs?
That would not be what this program is getting at,
Okay.
But there could be, there's like encourage community beautification and litter control in the last section under other, but
Okay.
There could be something a little bit more specific to vegetation.
Okay, and so we're going to go back over that after you do the other part? Is that
Yeah,
it?
so it sounds like the consensus would be, from what I've heard said so far, is that you wouldn't recommend this to the city council as done yet, but you would table it until you work on more specific design guidelines that will eventually go into the zoning ordinance or be incorporated into that process, and then revisit this document. There might be new ideas and make sure that they're consistent.
So when do you think we would revisit it?
Oh, maybe 6 months or so or less, maybe. I mean, it depends on how long it takes to get through the design guidelines.
Oh, okay. And the sign guidelines are in this too, in the design.
They are not, but I think, we've started to talk a lot about specifics, and I think those, so there's
sign policies are in here. Okay.
Yeah, so these are general policies, but I think we're getting bogged down and starting to talk about specifics. And so I'm suggesting we just move on to those specifics and work those out before we finalize the general policies.
Okay, so are we going to work on this plan, this element, or are we going to go to another element?
We would work on the design review. So right now in the zoning ordinance, they're called the design review and view protection findings. I think we might end up calling them something else, but it's going to be the specific standards or guidelines that would be used in approving design review for projects.
I mean, is that a priority instead of going to another element of the general plan, this one?
Well, right now, this is really probably the last
Besides the
element.
cultural,
Yeah, besides, well, there's the safety noise. We could go over noise. We could definitely do that one. The safety element, we've been waiting on the OPC grant. It's really unfortunate that's been delayed a year. We should have been working on that already. I hate for that grant to hold that up. It's a really important element, but we do have the funding for it. So it's probably worth waiting for. And then the cultural element is the other one, and that needs some more work with staff behind the scenes before it gets back to the Planning Commission.
okay, thank you.
Tom?
Trevor, would it be, or maybe somewhere in here, I didn't see it, but could we say native plants are preferred, or, at least try to nudge people towards native plants somehow? Since this is a policy, just saying something would be good.
Yeah, and we absolutely have that in our conservation element. And so
Okay,
maybe
great.
I can look through the conservation element and see if there's something that would translate over to this element.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments before I open it up to the public? Okay, hearing none. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on this agenda item. And once again, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone from the public who would like to make a comment on this? Okay, seeing none or hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. I think you answered one question I had, Trevor, and that is that this isn't necessarily hanging up anything for further review for the council. And I guess my feeling is, yeah, I'd like to start in on the design guidelines as soon as we can. I think we've got a good team here and I'd like to keep it moving. So sounds like a plan if everyone concurs to that. Okay. So basically, I guess what we're saying then is that the consensus is that we'll set this aside and begin to work on the details of the design review criteria. And we'll come back and look at this as we progress and if necessary, amend as necessary. Okay. All in agreement? Great. Okay, next item on our agenda is project streamlining, exemptions, exclusions, and administrative permits. Discussion of the CDP/DR exemptions, exclusions, and waivers. Once again, this was continued from our January 19th meeting. Trevor?
Yeah, and really continued from our December meeting because we didn't get a chance to talk about it in January. I did add a little bit to my staff report, and I probably updated the regulations too as I've been going through and thinking about it. So previously I had just given you residential exemptions and that was based on the SB2 grant, which was intended to sort of help streamline residential projects in particular, because that's housing community development grant. So they emphasize housing. But to put it in context, it does make sense to kind of look at the entire thing. So I added all the Coastal Commission exemptions are in there. And then I also took a stab at exclusions. So exemptions are basically straight out of the Coastal Act. one difference is that under the Coastal Act, a new house, or let's see, I guess maybe not a new house, but any improvements to existing residences would be exempt outside of appealable areas, outside of ESHAs and some other limiting factors, where I have made all improvements greater than 10% in floor area, 10% in height, subject to a coastal development permit, because that's currently what we do. And so I'm sort of limiting that. But one thing to consider is whether we want to have different standards for design review and CDPs. So we could maximize the projects that are exempt from CDPs, but maybe those projects are still subject to design review. That does start to complicate the permit process, which has been fairly simple in Trinidad, but it's going to get more complex anyway with our zoning update. But that's something we can think about. I just want to point that out, that we could have different coastal development permit exemptions that are different from the design review exemptions. Right now, they're the one and the same. And so that's how these are currently written. And then there's exclusions. So Trinidad currently doesn't have any of the actual Coastal Act exemptions in its ordinance. It only has exclusions, which are approved by a separate order from the Coastal Commission. And so these ones are different and would require a new exclusion order. I have not had a chance to get any comments from Coastal Commission on this, but I used some examples from other communities, and I brought in some of the existing exclusions that the city has, like grading, certain accessory structures, things like that. So there's a set of activities that are excluded from permit requirements. So for exemptions, projects are basically just exempt. Some communities have some sort of application and checklist process just to verify that. Exclusions, though, require a little bit of documentation. Right now, we are supposed to be documenting exclusions, which I didn't know until a couple of years ago, and we've just never done that. But the exclusion order did have that requirement. It just didn't make it into the ordinance. And then the third part is waivers. So originally I called it waivers. This is one change from the January meeting. We didn't talk about it. So the Coastal Commission has a waiver process, but they also have an administrative permit process. And I don't really see how in Trinidad that would really be different, except that waivers, once you grant them, aren't a permit, and so you can't put conditions on them. So I thought, well, the same process you can use and have an administrative permit process, and you can still put conditions on them. So that's basically where I would go through a checklist. I would make the findings that a project is consistent, and but it would still, notices would still go to neighbors, and I would still get reported to the Planning Commission so that the Planning Commission could object to the administrative permit and take it themselves. So there is that option under that process. So, and I know that's all very confusing, and Richard has asked for a flow chart. I wasn't quite sure how to start that, and I welcome anybody who wants to try, but I did try and start a matrix, and so maybe this is helpful. I don't know that it's that much easier to follow than the regulations. Right now, I only have residential projects in there. So I sort of have, improvements to existing structures and improvements, which would include landscaping and that sort of thing. And then what would, under that category of projects, what would be exempt, what would be excluded, and what would be, be able to get an administrative CDP. And then I've also got repair and maintenance and new structures and improvements. So none of those are exempt, but some landscaping and accessory structures could be excluded. So, and then of course the exclusions and administrative CDPs all have their own limitations on them. So it's a multi-layered, it's not it's not an easy thing, but I think this is, I'm not sure we have a lot of options other than just requiring a coastal development permit for all projects. Because this is the only way to sort of exclude and exempt projects, is you have to have these layers. In terms of all the examples that I've looked at for other certified LCPs, this is the kind of level of detail that they have. So I know this will take some time to absorb, and so I guess probably for this meeting, it's going to be mostly questions and clarifications, and any comments. I think particularly the exclusions, whether you think those are appropriate. Like I said, the exemptions are kind of set in the Coastal Act already, just maybe not in so much detail, but and then the administrative permit is really a more procedural. So hopefully that is clear as mud, and I'm happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Diane?
So Trevor, I like the flow chart, and my main question is, I got to find it now. Here it is. So the city doesn't keep a close track of these, the waivers, exclusions, and exemptions. So would Anton be able to do that? Because he's at the Planning Commission meetings, so he's hearing all kinds of details that we're talking about, questions that we're bringing up, staff reports, and then your explanations when we have questions. So I'm just thinking, maybe that's something that he could do, because the building inspector is only there one day and Anton's there every day, whether he's answering questions or getting an update from Gabe or doing, his part on as the administrative assistant. So I'm just throwing that out because I think he's doing a very good job in the city as the assistant in the city clerk's office. So that's my idea for keeping track. And then you could further find out if we do have to have a coastal permit for these different sections, waivers, all those.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. Right now, we're not really set up. And right now, all we have are exclusions in our ordinance. So we don't have the exemptions, we don't have the waivers or administrative permits. And so someone goes to City Hall or they call me and they say, how high can my fence be? Or, I want to put a shed in my yard. What are the limitations? And I say, well, it can be 120 square feet without a building permit, and it needs to meet the front setbacks, and you're good to go. So it's just right now a verbal exchange. Sometimes people submit some drawings, but often it's just, how high can my fence be, or something like that. And there's not a plan. But in the future, that was one of the things I said we should consider, is whether, every project really, should submit something to the city and have a little bit of a checklist so we document it. And we are going to have to do that for exclusions. So, if someone's doing some construction, often questions are raised. And if we had something in the file that said, oh yeah, it checked all the boxes, it's exempt, they can go ahead, then, that can alleviate community concern. So yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, and formalizing this process as we amend the ordinance.
Any other comments? Tom and then Aaron.
There was just recently a deck job that was going, and they put flagging up. And it really gave the people something to look at. I mean, the whole Trinidad lighthouse down the hill, if that had a pole up with some flagging, I think that would have been, when does that get triggered? And it's getting to get tricky with these exclusions, but so you mail things out to the neighbors. And so if they complain, then that gets triggered?
It could. So the exclusions are, so the exemptions and exclusions are, they are what they are. If the project meets those limitations, then they are, it's kind of like a ministerial, they check the boxes and they get to move forward. For the administrative permit, it would be it's considered discretionary, so that I have some decision-making power. I can, look at it and say, oh, I think that's going to affect, I don't think that will affect views, that sort of thing. And right now we don't have any requirements for the story poles or flaggings. It's just something that if a project seems like it has the potential to affect views, we request it, and that it be placed up before the meeting so that people have a chance to see that. But it's not a written policy. It's not a regulatory requirement. But I do think that as we develop the application and permitting process for design review and coastal development projects in the future, that should be part of it. Right now we don't have any, for example, we don't have any requirements in our ordinance for what needs to be submitted in an application. Most communities do. And so, for example, we'll add that story poles will be placed. I don't know exactly what that criteria will be, but yeah, I think we should add that as a written requirement somewhere.
So we'll do it at that time. Basically, if it affects views, it's going to be, we need to see it.
I mean, we could, maybe we want to have it for every project that's over a certain height or something like that. Because, I like with the deck, I didn't really expect it to affect views, but I don't necessarily know. So, maybe it's a requirement for all projects.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The folks are real nice, but I ran into them and they were like, how to make it easier for people to just go, oh, no, this is what we do. Not like, oh, we were making them do something, because that's what it ended up kind of feeling like. Oh, and they were fine with it, but I just thought, yeah, it should just always be a certain way.
Yeah.
So whatever, that's my 2 cents.
No, that's a good point. And it, to have those objective criteria, for when things happen, so that it's not my judgment or the planning commission's judgment, that it's, if a project meets some criteria, then that gets done.
Yeah. The checklist.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Aaron, I think you had some comments.
Yeah, I did. Trevor, just kind of working through the document here. Your comment, TP2, about internal, right? How does this apply to things without internal floor area? What were you looking? It's on, sorry, page 1 of the actual exemption. I guess my question was, does it apply to things if there's no internal? I mean, you know what I mean? I guess that was the first one. What are you looking for there with that? You're muted. Oh, there you go.
That might, I mean, some of these are probably questions for me to follow up on, because
Gotcha.
I actually have that question for the Coastal Commission. Like, how do they apply their exemptions to landscaping? or a fence, because okay, so you increase a fence height by more than 10%, but I'm not sure, like landscaping to me is the big one. I would ask Coastal Commission staff how they apply that. And
Okay.
maybe we can add clarifications to our provisions.
All right. I had a question on 2F. Is there a definition of replacement of 50% of the walls? Does that have to be the structural supporting members if you just re-sheetrock or switch from lath and flat? I was just curious about that because this would be more an exemption, more statutory, right?
Yeah, no, I think that is a good point. So yeah, definitions are very important. And so maybe we want to look at definitions along with these regulations. That's a good idea.
And that would fall under BF as well for the other than single family residence public structures. The same question there. I had a question on page 5, your comment TP5 when it comes to lot and line boundary adjustments. I'm trying to, examples that I've seen in my short tenure here with the Planning Commission. I know we just did the lot line adjustment for, I believe it was Bob Lake, the Katy Smokehouse property. Is that what this would be? And would that have changed what's written here? Would that change anything about what happened in that instance?
Yeah, I think that's a good example because that did not really change anything about the development potential on the property. There's a lot of non-conforming issues on that property. We addressed that. So yeah, and then there is apparently the big lot on Underwood. I've always thought it was one big lot. It's like 3 acres. It actually is 4 lots, legal parcels currently. And so they're looking at a lot line adjustment, but it's going to increase the development potential because the house is currently sitting across 2 of the lots. So if they do a lot line adjustment, they are going to be increasing the development potential there. And so that's something that requires a coastal development permit. So that's what this is kind of getting at is, yeah, you can adjust a line. Oh, the fence was built a foot off, so we're going to adjust the line to match the fence. Something like Bob Lake, that would be acceptable. But there are situations where it could increase the development potential.
Moving on, D6. The 1,500 square feet, you have a comment that it's 2,500 for the state. Why would we limit it to 1,500, I guess? If someone has a large lot and they want to redo the landscaping, it feels kind of arbitrary to me.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. It just seemed like, 2,500 square feet of fancy landscaping is a lot. And with Trinidad's water issues and septic, I guess that was my justification for requiring something less is because we're, concerned about water use and, impacts to septic systems. But I think it is arbitrary. Maybe we should talk to a landscape designer about that or something.
I guess maybe what is the rehabilitated landscaping? What does that mean? Because we limit it for new landscaping less than 500. So that's a pretty tight trigger on that, which I like. But I'm just curious what, for example, my lot came with no trees on it. It's basically all grass and a few rhododendrons. I have plans for it that I want to do, but is that new? Is that rehabilitated? For someone that would get stuck by that. I think I had one more here I had a question on. Getting to the notice section on page 8. I guess just I have a general comment. About 3 places posted around town. I guess I would be a fan and advocate for over noticing versus under noticing as a kind of policy or guiding principle. And then the last point, just under G, the report to the Planning Commission, I just wanted to clarify or make sure I understood what you said earlier. For the administrative/waiver ones, there still is a stopping point where they will come before the Planning Commission before they're approved and can, shovels in ground, so to speak. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I would report, I would report it to the planning commission as, it'd almost be something like, we might start having a consent agenda item like the city council does, and that would be something that would, be on consent. I would give you a report, you would see the plans, but it doesn't necessarily get discussed at the meeting unless the planning commission wants to pull it.
Okay, cool. That was it. Thanks.
Okay. Trevor, well, it sounds like what we've been doing is just kind of walking through and asking questions. So I'll continue that, I guess. I guess my first question is, at the bottom of page 1 and on the top of page 2, you say that Trinidad's existing exemptions are technically exclusions. Can you kind of clarify that for me?
Yeah, so currently the city has, let's see, let me just pull it up real quick. So section, they're kind of buried. They're not even, so it's section 1772070 deals with coastal development permits. And, in current ordinances, coastal development permits take up whole chapters. So this really is a little bit sparse. So I guess it's not really written as exemptions. It says the following categories of development shall not require a CDP except in the special environment zone. And then it goes through all the exclusions in subsections B and then C. They are referred to exemptions, I believe, if you look at the design review. So if you look at the design review section 1760030, it says design review basically in that last sentence is not required if exempt from a coastal development permit as specified in 1772070. So it refers to that section and says if it's exempt from a coastal development permit. But really those come from an exclusion order that was approved by the Coastal Commission. All those exemptions found in section 1772070, those are all from an exclusion order from the Coastal Commission. And so we don't have any of the Coastal Act exemptions codified in our ordinance, if that makes sense.
Okay, so we just did an overall exclusion order from the Coastal Commission. Thereby everything then would be included. I see.
Now, in practice these days, because Trinidad's ordinance conflicts with the Coastal Act or the Coastal Act regulations, Coastal Commission regulations in a number of instances. For example, there are no exemptions within 50 feet of a bluff in most cases. And so in practice, when they conflict, I use the stricter of the two.
Yeah, we've seen that. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll just go real quickly through the document and just like everyone else did, and then we can plan what our next moves are. One of the things you touched on it earlier, and I think it's very important, especially in this case, we need some definitions of some of these things. And the first thing that comes to mind is if you look on page 1, on 2A, A2A, we talk about areas designated as highly scenic. There is no way in the world I can define that in Trinidad. So I think we either need to come up with some other wording or figure out what that really means. And that's kind of peppered through the whole document. And then let me just clarify at the top of page 2. If I understand what this says, is that under improvements for existing single-family residences, you are exempt from a permit except for the following situations. And one of them is at the top of page 2, item 3, use of existing or permitted structures, which I assume is something that's already been done for keeping pets, animal husbandry, small family day care homes, etc. Do I read that to say that you can have chickens without a permit? I'm using that as an example, but I'm trying to understand if I'm interpreting this correctly, and I'm only focused on the animal husbandry because that's really, does that mean that people can keep goats, cows?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think that's where, well, sometimes it's hard to look at these kind of things in a vacuum because there are going to be other regulations. So there are other regulations in the city for how many animals you can keep on different types of lots. So those would still apply. So yes, so the idea is that and I took this example from another ordinance that I saw that I made it more specific to Trinidad. So yes, so you would be exempt from a permit for these things, but probably we should refer to other regulations. So keeping of pets, animal husbandry, maybe we just include a blanket statement consistent with other regulations in the zoning ordinance or something like that. Or maybe I was sort of wondering about animal husbandry too. Is that appropriate in Trinidad? But yeah, so there are, if you look at in the zoning ordinance under specific use regulations, so that's going to be chapter 17.56. There's 56040 is animals, and so that regulates the number of animals you can have in different zones based on the size of your lot. So you would still have to comply with those other regulations.
Yeah, I think just as a general statement, then I think it's important that we do reference other ordinances and rules because, for example, another one there, the licensed residential care facilities for not more than 6 people. Well, okay, then we start talking about the ancillary type of issues like OWTS impacts for 6 people, parking, another one. My main concern is that sometimes these things are so broad and try to cover so much that we get lost in the, in the nebulous weeds. Okay, moving on. There's just some nits. Are we talking 14 inch trees now, or are we still talking 12-inch DBH? It's referenced both in several places.
So I think that's up to you. They should be consistent, certainly. Okay. So it's probably something I copied from somewhere else. I think, I've seen anywhere from 12 to 18. I think in the county coastal regulations, it's 18 inches. It might have been my typo or it was something I took from another community. So I think anywhere in the 12 to 18 inches is probably reasonable and, can be something that is debated upon by the Planning Commission.
Okay. All right. So right now there's no set. We're just looking to define that at some point in the future. Okay.
Yeah, so, I would recommend that we have a definition for major vegetation removal, for example.
Well, yeah, lots of things would need more definition, more definition, no doubt about it. I'm just hitting kind of the high spots of the mountains right now. Page 9, the report to the Planning Commission. I know this is a little bit of a nit, but it says if 1/3 or more of the full membership of the Planning Commission. Well, with a Planning Commission of 5 people, 1/3 is a little more than 1.5 people. So
Yeah, good point. It should be at least 2, and maybe we just say 2.
yeah, but okay. I guess now what I'm seeing is a lot of this was kind of from other organizations and other cities, and so okay, we can tailor it much more than I thought we could. Okay. So what do you see as the steps here? I mean, like I said, we've kind of walked through and looked at a couple of little things. Do you want to take the comments we have given you so far, plug them back in, and we go through it, or where do you want to go with this right now?
Sure. Yeah. I think, I think as much as trying to think through the process, think how these would be applied to various situations you've come across or, can think of in Trinidad. And so we, massaging these things, the adding definitions, I think, is important. I think, again, thinking through the process, things like you just pointed out, well, it should be just 2 members of the Planning Commission, or, or a majority. However, that's up to you how you want to do that. So going through that, making sure it all makes sense. And then I think the exclusions are where it's really up to you guys. We don't have to have an exclusion order. We can keep our existing exclusion order. I don't like our existing exclusion order. But that is totally on the table. I think the exclusions are completely open. Like I said, you don't have to have them. It's whatever the Planning Commission or whatever the Coastal Commission will accept. Obviously, they might have some comments on what is excluded. So I think definitely thinking through those in particular. But yeah, and I think, yeah, just thinking about how these might apply, what situations are likely to come up in Trinidad. Are we missing things? Do we have too many exemptions? We could certainly be more strict than the Coastal Act and the Coastal Commission, so we can require permits for more things, but we can't be less strict, obviously. So yeah, I think it seems like a simple, oh yeah, let's work on our exemptions, and then as you dig into it, it's pretty complex. So this is going to take some time to think through. So yeah, my primary suggestion is to think about the exclusions, and then think about examples of projects in Trinidad and how these regulations would apply to them, and then provide me comments and feedback.
And where again was the exclusion order?
Currently, the exclusion order is 1772070 B and C. B and C. I'm not sure if D may be it's a repair and maintenance exemption. It was actually, the exclusion order was approved by the Coastal Commission as a separate document. Maybe would it be helpful if I tracked that down and got that to you so you can see what exactly that looked like?
I think it would be for me. Yeah.
Yes.
I will do that.
Okay. Diane.
Also on those exclusions, now we've got the accessory dwelling units, and that's gonna, I think it doesn't have to have a permit, but the solar panels have to have a permit. So it's kind of a slippery slope. So I think if we get that exclusion order that the Coastal Commission wrote, we can understand more. I don't want to be lenient because, they're going to everybody will do what they want to do, park where they want to park and drive in what they want to drive in. And, just like Tom said, here was a deck. And, maybe we will get everybody to do story polls so there won't be a question. They won't get 10 calls at City Hall. They'll be able to see polls. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments for staff, clarifications for staff before I open it up to public comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll open it up to public comment as an opportunity for the public to weigh in on this particular agenda item. Again, please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anyone from the public who would like to comment on this? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. So the action items that I picked up so far are, and I think all of us need to look at definitions, items that we believe would need to be further defined. I think looking at the CCC exclusion order in 1772-070, B, C, and possibly D is a good idea. And if you could find that original document, that might just add further light to it. And I should say too, I do like your little chart here as it started. I think that's a great place to start, and it does add some clarity to what we've been talking about here. So anything else that we need to take as actions? Diane?
We need to keep track. Have the city keep track of exclusions, exemptions, and because it says they haven't been keeping track. So that's why, I suggested Anton, but perhaps Trevor has to do it all, and maybe, the building inspector. But we need to, besides the checklist, we need to keep track of what is an exclusion, what is a waiver, what is an exemption. If they don't have permits, then we need to keep track, because someone's going to say, well, why did he get to do this and I can't do it and I need a permit? So just a tracking system.
Good point. Good point. I guess I would also add just one comment too, that it might be useful, as you pointed out, Trevor, if we take a couple of projects that we've looked at in the past and do a trial walkthrough and see how we performed in the past with respect to exemptions, exceptions, waivers, etc. And that I think for me, it might clarify a little bit more of the process and the decision process. So that's probably something I'll work on. Okay, anything else that you would want to get out of this, Trevor?
No, I think this is going to be a work in progress for a while. And I think, just talking through some of these things is really helpful, even just for me, to see some of the gaps. And, I can also think about some sample projects. The exclusion order, the definitions. I might also add a little bit more, I don't want to get too far down into updating the entire zoning ordinance, but I think sometimes some context is helpful in terms of application requirements, for example, like Diane was talking about a checklist, because these exemptions don't really happen in a vacuum. But hopefully we'll get that Coastal Commission grant that will pay to update the rest of the zoning ordinance. I sort of want to wait a little bit for that too and not get too ahead of things. But yeah, so there might be some areas where I add a little bit more context, might be helpful as well. Yeah, so no, this is helpful, and will allow me to keep working on it and make it better.
Okay, great, thank you.
And you're always welcome to email additional comments, or if you have a question, you say, oh, hey, I thought of this project. How would that fit into the regulations? And I can report back at the next meeting.
Good suggestion, thank you. Okay, our last agenda item is after the fact permit policy, review and discussion of the after the fact permit policy adopted in February 2021. And Trevor?
Yeah, so this is just something that we wanted to revisit. Let's see, so it was adopted, oh, look at that, almost exactly a year ago. It's a day, 1 day difference. So after the coal permit, it was, I think, the primary questions were having to do with the number 4. So unless the Planning Commission determines that there were extenuating circumstances, after the fact approvals will generally be conditioned on the applicant paying double the permit fee. And so the Planning Commission had talked about including some additional guidelines as to what are extenuating circumstances to help you make that determination.
Yeah, I know we talked about that. As I thought about this, I also at the same time realized that we could find ourselves going down a rabbit hole in trying to come up with too many conditions, too many circumstances, which would be extenuating. And so after I thought about it a little bit, and this is just my personal opinion of it, I want to hear what everybody else has to say. I almost feel like I would like to leave it the way it is, only because that gives us a little bit more latitude. Because every situation is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to depend upon the specifics of each application. So I'm afraid that we could just get totally wrapped up in trying to define what extenuating circumstances might be and never get there. And again, it is a policy. And well, I'll just leave it at that. I think that's what I would approach. But again, I'm looking for other comments.
I had a similar thought. My note here was that over the course of a year, we've had one data point come to us. So is this a problem we really need to try and solve, or can we continue to just kind of deal with it on a case-by-case basis, extenuating circumstances? And, I had a little bit of, I guess, felt at ease with the fact that anything we do decide can ultimately be appealed to the city council. So we're not the end-all be-all. If we don't feel there's extenuating circumstance, or there's an avenue for another check and a balance on the system. So I kind of like the concept as well, just kind of leaving it as it is. And if it becomes an issue, continues to be an issue, other than that one time we, took care of the fees that we could, and the rest of the stuff, I mean, Trevor's time was invested in that project and needed to be covered, just kind of leave it as is. I like that.
Other comments? Tom?
Yeah, I agree with, I think the only real problem is with vegetation removal. Building stuff, everybody knows what to expect, I think. But vegetation, people don't know. And like you say, we're going to be looking at that more. And yeah, trying to get people to encourage to do thing, like for the fire, if they're going to pay $750, they're not going to cut down the trees. And if it's going to be bad for the neighborhood, then we got to figure out some way to encourage them to do what's good. So, but that's That's my view, mostly with vegetation.
That's a good point. Any further comments? Diane?
So I agree with Tom. I think it's tough to do the vegetation because we don't really have a management plan for neighborhoods and the city that's enforced. So the guidelines and the enforcement for structures when people build something or pour something are pretty clear. But with CAL FIRE and the state's whole fire marshals combining with CAL FIRE to get this defensible space done, we need to let people do it and not double fine them. Okay, I'm done.
Good point. Very good point. Any other comments before I open it to public comment? Okay, I'll open it up for public comment for this agenda item. Anyone from the public would like to comment on this item after the fact permitting process? Actually should be after the fact permitting policy, I think. Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. And let's
Richard,
see,
like
Trevor.
Paula's hand.
Oh, Paula.
I just want to clarify, I'm a few hundred feet outside of the city line. And it's my understanding that these regulations are only for people within the city line. That as far as trying to get a defensible fire barrier around my house, I need to get permits from the county, not the city, even though I'm in the sphere of influence. I just want clarification on that.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I know, it's always a little bit of a conundrum.
It's a big conundrum in my case.
Welcome to the same boat. We're all in the same boat.
Okay, thanks.
Any other public comment? All right, hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Okay, Trevor, I was just looking, discuss and consider revising. So far, I have not heard any revisions per se. So would you like a motion to accept this, or it was already adopted, so?
I don't think a motion is necessary if you don't want to change it.
Once more, I just want to make sure everyone, any other comments or clarifications that anyone would want in this? Okay, sounds like we'll leave it as is. Thank you. Okay, item 6, commissioner reports. Any of the commissioners have anything they would like to report? Diane?
So the city passed out or mailed out the City of Trinidad short-term rental list and contact information. So I thought that was good, and I appreciated Jennifer or whoever ran it off putting it on green instead of white so that the curious can see who owns the short-term rentals. And then she also, put on our email, and I think in the post office, the need for, another planning commissioner, and the need for the short-term rental, another committee member. So we'll see what happens. Okay, that's about it.
Thank you. Any other commissioner reports?
Trails Committee met last night for the first time. Our next meeting will be in April is the plan, and the general plan of attack is just to do routine maintenance on the existing 4x4 signposts as needed, not adding to or doing that. And then beginning to work on the improvements to the actual Memorial Trail, the toe down at the bottom, as well as the stairs up to the head is kind of the focus. And we're trying to see if we can use some of that park and rec money that Becky was talking about, I think. So that's all.
Thank you. Anything else? Tom?
Aaron, I was night hearing about the sign for up on the head, and I was thinking about with all of our signs. I mean, do we want to try to make them kind of look similar?
So sorry, thank you, Tom. Yeah, that was something else that's a big push with the Trails Committee, is to try and get the signage unified for the trail system. And then there's discussion about, there's interpretive signs, directional signs, regulatory signs. And so that's one of the things we're looking into, as well as seeing if the city wants to hire somebody to kind of develop that plan for us and then come back and present some options that'll then get run to the council and go from there. So, and then the other thing, I'm sure you guys saw, the council approved the sign replacement, the transition between the gravel to the dirt trail. So that should be coming in the next month. Did that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, but when we're going to be doing our sign stuff, what, next time or the time after, probably pretty soon. I went driving around and I saw a lot of good looking monument signs, and here we're saying that we don't like those. They stay with two poles in the ground, they'll stay longer, or at least the wind won't knock them over. And I don't know, I just took pictures and looked at what was there, and I'm just want to make sure that that you're going in the right direction. That would be based off of our sign ordinance, right?
Yeah, in theory, what we'll have to, be governed by that too. But the sign ordinance doesn't do a whole lot of specific design criteria, I don't think, does it? Or will it necessarily?
Right
Not
now,
currently.
Yeah. Right now, what I'm getting is that they like pole signs more than a monument sign.
Right. And yeah, that's definitely, I'll bring that back as something to talk about at this next meeting. But the intent, as I understand from the Trails Committee, is kind of to still keep the pole signs, but then perhaps also have interpretive signs similar to that one that's being replaced up on the head, that tell more of the story of where you are versus just how to get there, if that makes sense. So kind of incorporating both.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Cool.
So Aaron, I had a couple community members ask me about the Wagner Street trail access down the bluff to the beach.
Yeah.
So you have any comments on that? I think it's really overgrown. I mean, I didn't
From
go
the
there,
Trails
but I
Committee, no. From the Trails Committee side, no. That would, my understanding is that's pretty well established. That is the access point, and there's criteria, I think, outlined in the various documents and settlements as far as what that should be. And I believe that's just on the city to maintain that.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I just had two community members had asked me about that, and I said I didn't really know, but there was a Trails Committee that might be able to answer the question.
Yeah, I would defer back to the city on that as far as the actual maintenance of the trail and keeping that vegetation there open.
Thank you.
Okay, any other reports? Very good. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, staff report.
Yeah, so I reported the council did approve the first reading of the amendment to the planning election of the Planning Commission chair regulations. They also were happy with the work that the Planning Commission did on the STR ordinance. So, there was some discussion about maybe some additional improvements in the future, but they wanna get what you guys recommended done. So they asked for staff to put together that as was recommended by the Planning Commission for first reading at the March meeting. And we're making some progress on the general plan figures, which is good. So hopefully I can get those out. That will probably be helpful for trails and all kinds of things. And yeah, so I'm just focusing on the SB2 grant, because that basically we can work through June, I think is about June, maybe July, because everything has to be submitted by September for that grant. So I want to wrap that up. I'm bugging the Coastal Commission to get some comments on the ADU ordinance. The LEAP grant, I found out, I thought we only had till the end of this year, but we have till the end of next year. So I don't have to worry too much about those tasks yet. And then just, yeah, the OPC grant, and hopefully that Coastal Commission grant will be coming forward, and we'll be able to finish up the LCP. It's not going to be anything that will happen overnight, but hopefully there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Always like to see those lights, as long as it's not the train coming towards me.
Well, you never know in Trinidad. Could be.
I know. Okay, we haven't talked about future agenda items very much lately, and we have 3 items on the list, and obviously they probably need to stay there. Are there any others that we need to add? I'm not suggesting any because our plate is plenty full, but we need to at least identify them. Diane.
So do we want to put the sign update and regulations on a future item? You mentioned something in some words, Richard, about that.
When you refer, you mean sign ordinance or?
Yeah, an update on the sign ordinance and then the regulations, especially since we're getting, a new sign at the school.
Yeah, I guess my feeling is, and Trevor, help me if I go down the wrong path, is that this agenda item is for something that we don't already have as part of our normal work that we're going to be doing. And the sign ordinance and any of the changes to the sign to reflect what we've done with the school, that's already on our plate, as opposed to something that's brand new. Such as what we needed to do with the update for like the TPM incorporation in the general plan, which that's separate from the general plan at this point. Am I making myself clear on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I had one more. I had a couple of community comments about speed bumps. They want speed bumps in town, and we've talked about them before, Trevor and Richard. So that, people would slow down. They really wanted them by the school. So I don't know, maybe slow down. We have the slow down sign, so maybe we can get one over by the school. But I don't know about the speed bumps, There's a lot of traffic in town now with the stormwater. There are graders, there are bobcats, huge trucks, and a lot of traffic is going down View and east, and then down to the Edwards. And I don't know if you're aware, but the stormwater project has a lot of equipment across from the Marine Lab. And was that okay to get? Is that where they had to put it, Trevor?
Yeah, and actually the Marine Lab is also doing a project, and they're coordinating that. So yeah, part of it is actually the Marine Labs project, part of it's the city stormwater project.
Okay, because I usually get my wild daffodils down there and they're not out, but the state park needs to get going on some vegetation maintenance because it's in the road, and there's only 5 parking spots on that side where the bluff, the bluff close to the ocean. So if you, Trevor, can give me a contact, I'm going to call the state park guy that I called before after one of the storms.
Yeah, I can do that. It's, gosh,
Just
should know-
email it to me.
I
That's
will.
fine. Okay.
I will do that, but I would comment that I think, Richard, that sign regulations isn't a bad thing to put on the future agenda items, because our design review regulations are not the same as the sign regulations. They might allude to signs like they do now, but it's not going to be the sign regulations. And it's an issue, or a sign plan, master sign plan is another thing. So maybe sign regulations / master sign plan, because it's not something I think we can jump into right now because our plate is full, but it is a recurring theme. And so we might as well just put it on our future agenda items, and then people know that it's on our radar.
Well, that's why I said, just correct me if I'm wrong. That's fine. Sounds good. Tom?
Kind of along those lines, could the website be put on there? Because there's really nothing we can't put on a website that can't be on a sign.
Yes, I mean, I don't know if that's really a planning commission agenda item, or I don't know if that's even a city council agenda item other than authorizing budget. Staff have definitely been talking about the website. So there's the website in general, which really is not great. But then there is a planning component to the website where we've talked about, permit, frequently asked questions, and some procedural. There is someone in my office who's putting together something like that for Crescent City right now, and I thought I might be able to steal some of what he's doing. And that can be done on a staff level. I don't know if that. I do want you to keep me honest. I want you to keep bugging me about that, because that's not really something that's high on my priority list to write those, especially if we're just going to be amending the regulations in another year or two. But I think it's a very important thing. And so there's the overall website that needs some updating, but yeah, we need to add some planning information on there as well. And that probably needs to come from staff, and we just need to get it up there.
Yeah, we might want to just spend a little bit of time in the near term to make a recommendation, so that it's a formal request that there are certain things that we think as a planning organization what would be very useful to put on the website. So at least we're on record of saying it. So yeah, that's a good point. Very
And
good.
let Tom email Trevor some of your ideas, to put on the website, if you would do that.
Yeah, if you want to email me topics or questions for the frequently asked questions, and I can sort of start to compile a list and maybe start to just at least slowly get things up there. So yes, that would be really helpful if you guys want to send me ideas.
Well, I'm going to start by looking at what other towns do, in particular tourist towns, because that's what this is becoming.
And yeah, coastal communities in California are likely to have some similar requirements. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate all of the hard work and effort tonight, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next month.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.